Welcome to the TLT Movement Podcast, a podcast for tomorrow's leaders today. In this episode, we are sat with Rylee, who is a TLT alumni that went to our conference in 2022, this past year, and she is a shining example of what TLT program can do for a young person. I think she's a walking, breathing testimony of tomorrow's leaders today, leadership qualities being infused into the youth. So we're just going to have a conversation with you today, Rylee, and get to know you.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm blessed to be here.
Anything challenging is going to be hard. But so what? Hard could be the new fun.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Who's going to carry the boats? Endeavor to persevere.
If you want to be a good leader, you have to understand human nature.
I never look back, it distracts from the now.
Now you look a little nervous. Are you nervous to be on the show?
Slightly.
That is okay. So I just want to chat with you as far as what your life looked like before and what you experienced during the conference, and then what your life looks like now. And so let's start with now. What does your life look like right now?
Right now, my life looks like a dream I've always had. Like everything I've ever wanted has fallen into place by the grace of God, and I just feel like it just keeps getting better and better, even if the days are hard, even if I'm still going through reprogramming my subconscious, even if I'm still accepting my new identity and who I truly am and who God says I am. I feel like my current situation is it's so much safer than where I've ever been in my life. It's so much. I've learned so much. I've had so much time and room to grow, even in just 2 months. And I've lived here for about 2 months. I live with the Hazims currently.
So the Hazims, they put on the conference each year. The Dr. Andrea Hazim is the CEO and kind of the mind behind Elevate Life and TLT, and she has invited you after the conference to come live with her. And so you kind of get to live with your mentor.
It's wonderful. It is awesome getting to live with my mentors. I'm learning something new every day. My days are structured. I've never really structured my life in such a way that was beneficial. It's a big blessing to get to live here and to get to be welcomed into their home and getting to see how their life is structured, and also getting to work for TLT, because now I work for Elevate Life and I've become an ambassador, TLT ambassador. I'm a TLT ambassador now, and I get to see behind the scenes of what it's like to run this thing and get to be a part of something so great and so big. It's something that it truly feeds my soul and my spirit.
That is so awesome. Yeah, so when I volunteered this year at the TLT conference, I remember I came up to you during the week and I said, you are like the number one person that I'm noticing here that is all in. Like, you really are going all out. You're super into the activities, and you look like a sponge, just soaking it all in. And I actually, over the past couple months after conference, have been spending a lot of time here. So I'm kind of a nomad right now, and I travel around the U.S., and I've been spending a majority of my time in Florida between Fort Myers and Fort Lauderdale. And when I'm here, I stay at this house too. And so we've kind of gotten acquainted as roommates in a way.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten to know you, and it's really quite amazing to see how you've taken these tools and ran with them, and just how your life's been transformed. And
thank you.
And as I've gotten to know you a little bit, I've gotten a look behind the curtain to what your past life looked like, because now you seem very stable and happy and capable, and as you said, like you have a structured life, and it seems like, to me, like this is just who you are. But as I've kind of talked to you and learned about your past, like it did not always look like this.
Yeah, definitely not.
So take us back.
I'm a new creation.
Where yes, where did you live as a kid?
I grew up in Las Vegas. I was born in Utah in a very, very tiny little city. And I actually lived in Florida for about a year when I was 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
Back and forth between here and Utah for about that year. And then when I was 6, I moved to Vegas, and I ended up growing up there. I've been there for the past 12 years.
Like, you mean like Las Vegas, like
Yeah,
like,
straight Las Vegas, 20 minutes from the Strip. The city's very small, so yeah.
So it sounds
very
like
diverse though.
Yeah. And I remember when you were at TLT conference, you were telling me how you lived on a farm in Nebraska.
Yeah, so I have family out in Nebraska, and I left home beginning of this year. I just left home beginning of this year. I ended up living in Vancouver, Washington for a few months, and had some personal stuff to work out there. Then I ended up getting a call from my uncle around April, and he was like, "Hey, I need some help out here in Nebraska. Like, come help me out." So I went out there, and I was basically an apprentice for construction workers, and he was buying land and just doing his own thing, and I was helping out. And I worked on a farm. So it was really fun.
So what after TLT, why didn't you go back?
Well, after TLT, I did go back. I went to 2 camps this summer, and they were like 5 days apart. First one was TLT, most prominent, and right after both of those camps, and I went back home, and I was like, Lord God, where do you want me to go? I ended up surrendering my life, and my faith grew exponentially during that time, and I asked God, what do you want me to do? Where do you want me to go? My mom calls me up the next day, literally the next day after I made that call, and she's like, "Hey, I want you to come home to Vegas. Like, come help me finish up your RV." I bought a trailer, a little fifth wheel, end of last year. And she's like, "Yeah, come help me out, finish building it." And I was like, "Cool, okay." So I worked some stuff out in Nebraska, and the plans there just kept falling through. So I was like, okay, so the Lord really wants me to move out of Nebraska. So I ended up telling my friends from TLT, like, "Hey, I'm leaving Nebraska. Let me know if you know anybody I could stay with." The next day, Dr. Andrea called me, and she's like, "When are you coming?" "We have a space for you." So I was like, wow, okay. So I felt such a strong call to move out here. I ended up visiting my family for a month in Vegas, and moved right out here afterwards, and it just lined up so perfectly. It's been a beautiful experience and a beautiful past 4 months. Best 4 months of my life. Like, this has been the best year of my life, and it's the last year of being a teenager or being a kid, so it's just not that, kid inside. But
you're what, 18, 19?
Yeah, I'm 19. I'm turning 20 next month.
Very cool. All right, so you've kind of painted us a little bit of a scattered picture here. So I'm seeing that as a kid, you kind of moved around a lot, relocated across the entire U.S. continent, practically, to a degree.
Yeah.
And you spent a majority of time in Las Vegas and steady, downtown strip, gambling, money, drugs, all this stuff, right?
Yeah, very prominent there.
You've been talking a little bit about your family. What was your family life like growing up?
My family life was I did not have a normal childhood. First, I'll start off saying that I had a very how do I describe it?
Be as honest as you want.
Okay. I grew up in a very abusive household, and my mom worked 3 jobs, and from ages like 4 to 6, she was a single mother, and her and my father were getting a divorce, and she was raising 3 kids by herself, and she was only like 18, 18, 19. I think she had my brother Christian when she was 21, and at that time we ended up moving to Vegas, and we ended up having some serious, I guess I should maybe get into it a little bit, but
As much as you're comfortable.
Okay.
With.
Yeah, so when I was 6 years old, we ended up moving in with this man. He was very abusive. It was very hard for my family, and my mom was working so much, and she was never really home. You know, she did the best she could. And for a lot of my life, I blamed her for that, and I held a lot of resentment and unforgiveness that she wasn't around as much as I needed her, you know, because she was providing for us in other ways, because the men that were taking that father role in our lives were not present. They were selling drugs, abusing me and my brothers at home, sleeping all day, just never really there, especially emotionally. So from a very young age, I had completely disassociated from life. Everything was automatic. Like, I did what I was told. I was a very angry child. I didn't really communicate growing up unless it was through an angry interaction. Like, I was constantly yelling, very aggressive, because I was confused in life. I was scared. I had no protection growing up. And yeah, I went through a lot as a child, and I held on to those feelings for so long. And as a child, you don't really know how to handle or process some of the things that I went through. I went through a lot of physical and sexual abuse, and as a child, you don't know how to mentally handle it. You just think, oh, this is somebody that loves me and that's supposed to protect me and care for me. Yet they're treating me like they would treat mommy. Like, it's weird. It was just a lot growing up. So yeah, the only emotions I ever felt were angry, and I used to think about dying all the time. I was like 6 years old, sitting in my room playing Animal Jam for hours on end. Like, growing up, that's all I would do was watch videos on my iPad, like, just completely disconnect from the world around me as much as possible. And I'd play this game called Animal Jam, and if I wasn't playing that, I was just like playing with little toys and just thinking about, like, I would take a bullet for every person in my class, and like, I would go through scenarios in my mind about how I just didn't want to live anymore, and I didn't understand why. The whole time it was like very conscious thinking. It was very interesting being on the outside now, being a conscious individual now, and looking back and being like, wow, there's so much I missed. There's so much I didn't understand. Yeah.
As you describe this, I'm seeing you as a person, as an embodiment almost of a generation of young people that have maybe experienced physical or sexual abuse and been contemplating, maybe idolizing suicidal thoughts and tendencies and playing on their iPad. And I mean, I know growing up for me, I spent a lot of time online, and back in our childhood, it was kind of the Wild West, where it was like unfeathered access. You could just find and see anything. And this definitely, I know, speaking from a place of I mean, it messed me up a good bit. And so I can only, and I had parents that I felt did a very good job. And so, I mean, I can only imagine the double down of this not feeling safe, and then the disconnect, being online and all this stuff as a kid would be tough. And I know that you're not the only one, because as I talk to more and more young people, it seems like this is fairly common.
Yeah.
And it's not good. It's not fun. But how did this upbringing affect you as maybe a teenager, growing into yourself and who you are meant to be and all of this? Like before you came to TLT conference, what did your life look like? What was your mindset? Was it similar to when you were a kid?
I definitely want to touch on that. This disconnect from reality in our generation is detrimental. Definitely detrimental. And I feel like that fed into me being unable to cope or process with the world around me. And that addiction to escapism really played into my teenage years. I found any way I could just to forget. I found any way I could just to numb myself and lose myself, because I didn't even know who I was enough to lose myself, but I was already lost. But it's like I did as much as I could to forget, and I took a lot of substances, and I struggled with addictions a lot growing up. If we can go further into that, I was addicted to like psychedelics and Adderall. I would never really I didn't want anything else other than to just be high and go about my day as if the world around me was not there. Like it's just like what I learned, because I know that ages 1 through 7 is when your neural pathways are being formed and programmed in your mind. And because that's how I coped as a kid, through escapism, just block it all out, forget about it. It's not there, is what I did in my teenage years, except starting in middle school is when my depression got extremely bad, and my suicidal thoughts were at an all-time high during middle school and freshman, sophomore year.
What kind of friends were you attracting into your life?
So growing up, I was very isolated. I didn't really have friends. So when I started middle school, I made one really good friend. I made 2 really good friends. One of the relationships wasn't that healthy, and I welcomed a lot of darkness in my friendships, because I didn't really know. I didn't have boundaries. I was very caught up in trying to please everybody around me so that they would stay, so I would have friends, so that I wouldn't be alone, because I already felt so alone and just lost, and it was all subconscious. It's never like I actually consciously thought about these things until later and realized what I was doing. Up until like 3 years ago is when I really started that journey of like uncovering what I've become and what trauma had formed me into, and now finally being able to put a stop and be like, hey, what am I doing? But the kinds of friends that I drew in high school, they encouraged me to do drugs. They were also lost in their own trauma and completely isolated from the world. I was in the group of kind of like outcasted kids, just kind of trying to feel their way through life with their trauma, and still even going through stuff during high school and middle school. All that pain, it's like nobody knew what to do with it, so we would all just sit in a room, do drugs together, and that's what we did with it. And it didn't help any situation really, other than that's how we felt connection to each other.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, did you and your friends ever talk about your suicidal thoughts and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I had this. I was always the friend to pretend my problems weren't really there, so I tried not to talk about them as much. I tried to hide the fact that I was very suicidal and hurting myself, and I tried to just be there for others. And I had this one friend in high school who was very suicidal as well, and we were trying to keep each other accountable in some sort of way. And I remember like going to her house one day, and she wrote a whole suicide note, and it was on her bed, and I was like, what is this? And I read it, and I was like, this was in freshman year of high school, and this is when I started doing drugs, and I was like blown away. I was like, wow, she's thinking about it. So I would constantly worry that my friends were gonna like, off themselves, and I'm over here like thinking about the same thing. So there was no resolve, and I tried to get help throughout the years, but it was like
blind leading the blind type thing.
Yeah.
So looking back on it, do you maybe have any advice for somebody that would be a young person in high school, maybe struggling with this stuff? Like what, knowing what you know now, what would you do to kind of help yourself and others that are going through this? And I know that's a very loaded question, so we can go back to it. But
okay,
I just am curious what you think about that.
Yes. So
I guess maybe another way to think about it is like, how would you go back and what would you tell yourself and tell your friends now that you're in the place that you are now?
That the longer that you try to escape it or run away from it, it doesn't actually go away. That you can't actually escape from it until you look at it. And at that point, it's not escapism. It's fighting the battle that's there. Fighting against wanting to dissociate. Fighting against the reality that you are hurt inside. And that can change. Because one of the battles of the mind is like, oh, my situation's never going to change. Right now is all that matters. And it's going to look like this the rest of my life. And a lot of times, me and my friends would speak death over each other, over our lives. And the power is really in the tongue. And we would just constantly speak death over our lives.
What does speaking death look like?
Haha, I'm going to kill myself. Like, even joking about it, that's speaking death, because the subconscious is very logical. It takes things as is. So even if you're joking about it, your subconscious doesn't care. Your subconscious is like, oh, I want to kill myself. Like, and it replays. We would say stuff like that, like, oh, you're so stupid. Like, just putting each other down all the time, even if it's like a joke or even if we were serious. Like, I was like that one mom friend that was like trying to stick up for each other. Like, hey, that's not okay. Like, stop. But even just the music that you listen to, they're speaking in those songs. They're singing about money, sex, drugs, shooting somebody, just like all that type of sin and just darkness. That wickedness is just that was prominent in our lives. And I would tell kids that are struggling that it is possible to change, and you have more power over your mind than the enemy leads you to believe. That escaping isn't truly escaping, and the more you push it off and the more you push it down, the more it's going to hurt, the longer it's going to hurt. It's like if you leave a thorn in your hand and you're just going to leave it there. You're just not going to pay attention to it because it's hard to get out.
Yeah, it might hurt to get out, and to face your problems head on, as she said, might be a little too much to handle, might be too hard. So I would highly recommend that you talk to somebody, seek some help from a trusted adult. I would go to somebody whom you want to be like.
Yes.
I think a lot of adults in this world are emotionally still children. And so to look to an adult that you aspire to be or that you want to be like, if you don't have anybody like that, there are hotlines, there are ways to get help, and I know that is daunting and not fun. And I know I've struggled with some of these thoughts before. And for me, at least, it was like, well, if I call somebody, like if I call a hotline or I go see a therapist, then it's real. And I have to admit to myself, like, oh yeah, these thoughts are real. When I want to pretend or tell myself, oh no, like I'm good, like yeah, I think about it sometimes, but I know the real me is happy. I know the real me is good. I don't know. So it's a heavy topic, but I think it's one that tomorrow's leaders today need to hear, and that young people, I think, deal with more than not. And if you don't deal with it yourself, somebody in your life might. And you can see telltale signs. Like, I know comedy and joking around can be used a lot for this type of stuff because they don't know how to handle this stuff. So they use what we like to call like a chicken exit, where it's like, I'm not going to say like, hey man, like I'm so sad, I'm thinking about killing myself. Use some other coping mechanism to joke yourself around it or and so to look out for stuff like that and take it seriously enough to know that you're not going to be able to help them yourself if you're also a teenager or a child, but to seek advice. So I think that's great. So
yeah, it's also important to hear your view on that too, because it also shows the viewers like there are more of us. that feel that way and that struggle with the same battle, because I mean, the common enemy that we face is not very creative. He uses the same tactics on everyone, and if he can trick you into thinking a certain way, then he's winning the battle. But in retrospect, he's already lost. But it's important to get together and actually, like, we can fight this thing together, and we're all going through such a similar thing, and speak life over each other. Wow, yeah.
Speak life. It's surprisingly fun. And even if you think it's a little cheesy and your friends think it's a little cheesy when you tell them, like, genuinely that you love them and the greatness you see in them and what you like about them and their strengths, you speak. I know if I were in high school talking to my friends that way, they'd be like, stop being weird. Like you're like, that's goofy. But they like it. Deep down, their subconscious is like thirsting for this language because it's not common.
So true. And I think that's because of social media's cringe culture.
Yes.
Like, it's the whole cringe culture. Oh, like, even though that's what everybody wants, and they talk about, oh, we need to be kind to each other, but they want to pervert it and say, like, it's cringe. Like, it's,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's how my friends were in high school too. So I definitely can relate to that.
I think a lot of teenagers are like that.
Yeah,
I think
most of our generation.
Yes, like
sadly.
I feel like right now we're our audience is mostly teenagers and young adults. So I feel like this is a very common theme here.
The love that I've felt the past few months has been exponential. The love of God has penetrated my life, and every terrible thing I ever went through, I would do it all again because God is so good, and all my dreams are coming true because he is exactly who he says he is. And he has never once left me or forgot about me. And I feel like that's something our generation needs so deeply, is that sense of, oh, I'm someone loves me enough to never leave.
Not just somebody.
Me.
Not just
Not
somebody.
Just someone.
Literally the creator of everything.
How amazing. Like, he's so good and amazing. He's just so good and amazing. Like, it's just crazy because it makes it all worth it. I would do it again just to fall in love with him all over again. And I know he's going to do great things with it.
Yes. It's making me cry right now because it's so true. It's like I got this download the other day where it was like I felt this. I wrote a blog about it on my site, thedanieldebrinkett.com, quick plug, about how I felt like God told me, he's like, the anxiety right now in the youth, the mass spread anxiety, it's not because of the phones and the vape or the social media or whatever. It's a spiritual battle. Or a lack thereof. It's a lack of spiritual understanding, and it's a lack of God in your life, and you're feeling and you're worried about the future because you don't have a security.
So true.
And we are interpreting this as anxiety. And we go, oh, I'm struggling with anxiety. I need a pill, or I need weed, or I need to drink, or I need to have sex with my partner, or whatever it is to escape this anxiety. And you attribute
hours on social media and things like that.
Yeah, scrolling through.
Video games. That was another thing I struggled with for a long time.
Yes. All in the name of trying to escape anxiety because we have these feelings. It's like there's a root cause. You don't have a headache because your body is lacking aspirin.
Yeah.
There's a root cause, and we're trying to patch it up. We're trying to patch up the sinking ship with Band-Aids and wondering why we're still sinking.
Literally.
Yes.
Literally.
So, we talked about your now. You live with your mentors. You're feeling amazing. It's been the best 4 months of your life. Talked about your past with your turbulent childhood and the abuse and the escapism.
I also do want to point out the past 4 months, they have been the best 4 months of my life, but that didn't mean they were easy. I went through many trials and tribulations, many difficult situations that really tested the new programs that not even programs, like the new neural pathways that I'm forming in my mind.
Let's talk about yesterday. Yeah. You used to smoke cigarettes, and this week you got a little temptation.
it's been an on and off temptation, and I fought it real hard the past month. I quit during TLT. On the third day of TLT, my friend, one of my closest friends, she took my vape out of my hand.
Here.
I went to her. Thank you. I went to her because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to vape anymore. I'm tired of being addicted to this all the time. I'm always thinking about it. I get anxiety when it's not around. I even wrote a poem about a personification of nicotine and what it's like done. So if we can talk about that
After the story,
definitely.
yeah, you can remember.
My friend took it out of my hand. She took me to the front of TLT's like hotel, and she chucked it in the trash. She said, "You don't need this anymore. Not where you're going." And I was like, wow, I felt like, wow, I can really let go of this addiction. I can really break through. And that's been so hard for me in my life because I've struggled with addiction for so long. And I was like, there's truly a possibility. And in TLT, they talk about letting things go. They talk about reprogramming your mind. They talk about the effort. It's also an effort that you have to put in, and
So that's amazing that TLT showed you that you can actually break through an addiction. And even though that you've had 4 months of being here at the Hazim's house and going through this transformation, it's a lingering thought. It's a lingering program still running course in your mind. And you actually ordered some, not cigarettes, but like...
Yeah, it is some smokable herbs because I thought it's not nicotine. I'm done with nicotine. I crave it. I craved it so hard that I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. Maybe if I just smoke something else. Maybe if I just turn away from all I'm learning now to go back and look back at my old life for a second, just to smoke a little bit, just to relieve myself of some stress, that it would be fine. It'd be worth it because it wasn't weed or nicotine.
So you bought like a
little
like
Mullen wrap.
Yeah, just like something offline
Yeah.
that was smokable, but not quite either or. And so it got shipped to the house, and Dr. Jeff, the
Wait, this is very personal.
I mean, it's part of the testimony,
real.
right?
It's real.
It's real. It's like he found these things and he was like, "What is this?"
Actually, I told him.
Okay.
So yes, I have a tendency where I'm in a moment in my life where I'm like completely been broken down and being rebuilt. So everything I feel like I might be doing wrong, I go to my mentors and I'm like, hey, I'm open and I'm honest. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do here? What do I like? I'm being reparented in a sense, even just being rebuilt. All my thoughts, just everything. I'm a new creation. The Lord is doing great work in me. But yeah, so I did go to him the day after I bought it.
And what did your mentor tell you?
He told me that I was going to have to make a decision, that I don't need to go back. I don't need to look back. There's nothing for me in my old life. And we've talked about this many times because, it's a struggle. It's not easy. And it is something I have been fighting against, is going back. Like, don't go back. There's nothing for me back there. My old life had nothing to offer me. Nothing. I was suicidal, depressed, did so many drugs. Like, I never even wanted to work on myself as a person, was just angry all the time, didn't want to practice my gifts of like drawing, writing, just there was nothing back there, right? And now I'm at a point in my life where these are all new avenues for me. Like, I can look at it all differently. I can experience life in a new way because I let go of that old life, because God changed my heart. Yeah.
So Dr. Jeff, he gave you the option.
Yeah, yes, he did. He gave me the option. When it came,
he didn't just take him and toss him in the trash and go, you can't do that.
No, he said, this is from the devil. He waved it in the air. He put it on the table or on the desk or whatever, and he was like, I'm going to leave this here for you to make a wise decision. And he left it up to me whether I was going to choose the light or I was going to choose the darkness being smoke again, the light being don't turn back.
What did you do?
I met up with a friend. I had it in my bag all day, and I was thinking about it. Oh my gosh, and it was very hard. I kept thinking I could just pull over, and I'm fighting these thoughts. I'm praying against them. I could just pull over, smoke it right now, and nobody would know. And you know, I didn't. I hung out with my friend, and she and I were talking, and you know, she's like, let's ask for some forgiveness, because you know, if I've been saved from an old life and I try to go back, that's kind of like, it's kind of a little bit backhand of a gift I've been given, of like, you know, some good stuff, you know? So I'm like, all right. I told my friend Jamie, and it was in my bag, and I took it out. I gave it to her, and I said, please help me throw this away. And she threw it away. We threw it away. And I did not do it. Praise the Lord.
So I think the ultimate overarching story is that just because you went to TLTCON doesn't mean that you turn your life around and everything's fine and dandy and rainbows and it's all good now.
Yeah, I still struggle with things. Learning to restructure my life, have a good sleep schedule.
And it's a slow process, hard process, but it's worth it.
Yes.
And I've been seeing how you're like, I wish I could just fast forward. I wish I could just be the person that I know I'm meant to be. And I keep telling you, it has to be hard. You have to be working for it. If you got fast forwarded right now, you wouldn't appreciate it all. It's like, it's all a process. It's all a journey. And so now let's wrap up the show by talking about what you learned at TLT conference, what your experience at TLT conference is. We'll talk about that. Then we'll read your poem, and then we'll wrap up the program.
Okay. So what I learned a lot about forgiveness during TLT. I've been trying to get to a place where in my heart I truly want to forgive for about 3 years. And then during TLT, we went over the structure of forgiveness and how important it is, who in our life we can who in our life we can forgive to heal wounds inside of ourselves that have been left open for a long time, you know.
So it's not even forgiving for their sake, but for your own?
Yeah. Yes. I definitely feel like them being happy about forgiveness is a good thing as well, but it is for your own sake and your relationship with God, because if you're forgiven for all things you've done, or others forgive you, then shouldn't you also forgive? I think that's...
That was your takeaway. And I know that we've been talking a lot about God in this episode because this is Rylee's experience. I mean, this is...
Yes.
And so we're being open and honest. We're not going to censor God or anything. But TLT conference, it truly is open for everybody. And it's not a come to Jesus camp. It's not a, come here and where we're going to preach to you about God and you're going to get saved. It's a leadership conference where we're teaching emotional intelligence. And
yes,
your takeaway was the forgiveness and
it was a big part of it for sure.
Huge.
And also learning where in my life I could have done better and how I can move forward and learning to do those things and accepting myself right where I'm at. That was a big thing I took away too. Like, it is going to take time, and I do wish I could fast forward, but a big part is I'm still working on and practicing is accepting myself right now where I'm at and being content in that, because I'm learning every day.
Powerful stuff. I feel like this has really, I know that you came into this a little nervous, little shaky. I feel that you've really relaxed and that you opened up and this was an open, honest convo that I hope our audience gleans a lot from. I'm going to have you read this poem about nicotine.
Okay, thank you.
And then we're going to wrap up the show. I hope you all have enjoyed it because
yes.
I know I have.
Yes. I really did get to see during camp or during TLT conference, I really did get to see that a lot of us, and we talked about it earlier in the episode, but I really did get to see just how much people are going through such a similar thing, and that there are ways to get through it. There are solutions, that you don't have to sit in the same place. And getting out, one of the big things was getting out of your comfort zone, out of that circle, expands the circle. And then at some point you won't be that uncomfortable anymore until the next expanding of that circle.
That is one of my favorite takeaways from this camp. When I went when I was 16, that was my number one thing. And
Wow.
I felt it to be so useful when it came to my stuttering and my speech. And I took that nugget and I went back home and I was like, all right, every single day I'm going to talk to somebody that makes me stutter. It makes me uncomfortable. And so every day I would go talk to anybody that I could, child, elderly person, a classmate that I don't talk to, like anywhere where I would stutter, I would go out of my way to do that. And each time I was like, all right, I didn't die. Like, it's fine. Like I'm okay. Like,
Wow.
yes, every word I stuttered, and they were like, what the heck? And they walked away feeling very confused.
Oh my.
But I did it.
Good job.
And then each time over the years, it got easier and easier and easier. And now I'm speaking. I just got hired for a speaking engagement at a college on stage.
Congratulations.
I got I host this TLT podcast, like,
And you're so good.
and I'm not stuttering.
Seriously.
It was work. It wasn't, I didn't grow out of it. Everybody my whole life told me, you'll grow out of it. No, I had to work at it. I had to get out of that comfort zone every day, expand that comfort zone circle.
Wow. And you know, there's this student at Purpose Academy that also has a stutter, and he was talking about how he's very uncomfortable with public speaking. You know, he's actually one of the kids running TLT Club right now. And we talked to him about you and about how you've overcome this old insecurity. Like, you've overcome it, you work against it, and it's very inspiring for people who are struggling with certain things in their life, you know. And it really helped him like get through it. I think it gave him encouragement. We told him, like, he does this amazing podcast, he speaks for TLT, like, it was just really great to.
That just reminded me, before we read your poem, I can't believe we didn't talk about this, Purpose Academy.
Oh yeah.
This is like a huge part of the show that we just totally miss. So Purpose Academy is this middle school that we have TLT Club at.
Yes.
And it's a student-run club where they do outreach programs, and we actually just did one. It was in a recent podcast called Wisdom Keepers, where we got everybody in the club that goes to this school to go to an old folks' home and talk to the experienced people there. I don't like to call them old. Experienced people there.
Yeah. Or elders.
Elders. Advanced. And glean wisdom from them. They spoke to them for like 2.5 hours, just hung out with them and gleaned.
It was beautiful.
It was so awesome. And so you have been stepping out of your comfort zone and going to the school and talking in front of this entire middle school, like doing these assemblies.
Yes, I actually did one with my mentor, Dea, from TLT. And we spoke to these middle schoolers about just part of my testimony, the power between life and death in the tongue.
Let's actually cut to that clip because we got it.
Yeah.
Your words are powerful. What you speak is so powerful that it can cause someone to completely break down or someone to be completely lifted up. And the problem with our generation is that we're quick to say the negative. We're quick to complain. We're quick to type out a bunch of evil things. We don't think people are people anymore. We write out things and we hurt people's feelings and we insult them, and all of that is not right. You're using your mouth. Your greatest weapon is your voice, your words. We walk around every day with the most powerful weapon that we have, our voice. And you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. And that's how important it is. Evaluate what you're saying, evaluate what you're saying about other people, because you can either lift people up or break them completely down. And that's the power we have.
Wow, that was a good clip.
Agree. Dea is a fantastic mentor. She's wonderful.
Yes.
Amazing.
So that was the assembly, and then you actually went back to their club, and
Yeah,
what did you do there?
Yeah, I actually went there yesterday. I spoke on trust and the foundation of being a trustworthy leader, and who are trustworthy, the most prevalent trustworthy leader that human history has ever had. And
Who's that?
Jesus Christ.
Talk about
It's about
Jesus.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jesus, he really is the mentor of mentors,
Indeed,
as they say.
the Lord. Yes, yes. So I actually have an opportunity to get to work there as a mentor
At the school?
at the school and be an educator's assistant. And I know
Wow.
they gave it to me right after I spoke during that assembly a few weeks back.
Wow, that
It was
is
fantastic.
so cool. So pretty much what you're saying is if you go to TLTCON, you be all in and go all out. You use the tools that were given to you. Your life can transform, and you can get a job.
I know. And move across the country by
What a
myself.
concept! What a
What a
concept!
concept. Yeah.
The great adventure.
The great adventure.
That's what
of
our
Rylee Marie.
that's what our founder has said since day one. The great adventure.
Yes, the ultimate bite of life.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. All right.
There's one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay. Okay.
One important thing during that assembly that we talked about was because we were so vulnerable, others, the kids thought, like, oh, I can be vulnerable too. And they came up and they asked for advice, they asked for prayer, they were comfortable talking about some deep stuff that they were going through. And it was just very touching. And it was a great opportunity to get to show some of the kids in our generation, or even in the younger generation, that they're not alone, that they're loved, and that it's not forever.
That is awesome. And when you go into that mindset and that headspace of being vulnerable, you invite other people to do the same.
Amen.
And that is everywhere you go, everything you do, whether you are positive or negative, you are inviting everybody around you to do the same. So
Yes.
what impact do you want to have in this world? You want to be positive? You want to be negative? You want to be abundant? Share opportunity? When you share opportunity, more opportunity comes. When you share your testimony, more testimonies come. Invite people into that space.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
All right.
Amen.
This poem that we've been hyping up the whole show. Let's.
So I have a few.
Okay.
I have a few.
Hit them.
This one is about my addictions.
Okay.
This one's about my addictions. I took special time out of my day, sometimes multiple, to meet with you. I had to be there. The presence you brought to me only at the time meant to breathe you in, then sigh you out for momentary satisfaction. If I got to the point where I had to sneak out just to spend time together, I would. Limped body, lungs spotty. Sometimes I still think of you, but I want to forget about all the money that you used me for. You knew how to reel me in. Your aroma lingers, clinging onto my clothes and my skin. Lusting after you is a sin. And do you remember the walks we used to take together? The tears, the outbursts of frustration when you weren't around, or when I thought I lost you, when I couldn't feed you into my bloodstream. I enjoyed the sight of you, and my body felt as clouds vibrating into an empty-minded daze, simple. I shouldn't be flirting with you. This isn't a love letter. What you did to me was despicable. What you showed me could never compare to the comfort and peace that God has shown me. I pray I never touch you again.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I was a little nervous it was going to be cringy like we were talking about it earlier. That was that was incredible.
Thank you.
I now hear what you're saying about using your talents of writing
Thank you.
and drawing. That was very good.
Thank you so much.
That was very good.
Thank you.
All right, TLT. We were gonna read another poem, but all of our cameras just died. So now I'm filming this on my iPhone, and you know what? We are gonna end the show here. And so if you want to hear more of Rylee's poems, I think we might just have to have her back on. So leave a comment below. Let us know if you made it all the way through the podcast. Give us some feedback on what you thought. If you enjoyed this, share it with your friends and see what they think. And maybe, if you're feeling up to it, click the link below and come to TLT Conference 2023.
Woo!
It's going to be the best year yet, and that is a promise. So come on down, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Like, subscribe, share. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. TLT Movement Podcast.
Generation.